Hello, my friends. Hi, everyone. In every town of Georgia, in every village, I believe, there is a street or at least a turn or, I don't know, an avenue, an alley named after Ilia Chavchavadze. He is one of the I would say one of the saviors of Georgian identity that in the 19th century underwent through the great, well, I would say really great upheavals because it was I would say severely oppressed and neglected by the Russian Empire, which in early 19th century violated the conditions of a big treatment that had been signed in the previous century, in the end of the 1700s, and thus basically it invaded Georgia and annexed the country, which caused a chain of a lot of events associated with obviously this oppression and thus the neglect of the local culture, unfortunately. But, well, let's speak about this person who helped and definitely kickstarted the revival, not only just of the culture, but the language, and how he is remembered today as one of the people that foresaw Georgian independence. And that's important to remember that all my tours are not about politics. I know wherever Russia is involved, it's always about politics, and Israel as well. I'm very well aware of that, being a Russian Israeli, but I try to focus on culture, try to focus on legacy, heritage, and avoid these geopolitical questions. And I respect Georgian independence. I appreciate the past that we had, no matter how bad or how good it was, it's the past, and we just need to learn from it. So what I'm showing you is actually the Kura River that flows all along the city. And just yesterday, I did a live walk tour for another company that I do virtual tours for. And we actually walked the bridge across the river. And well, right now, from the both sides of the river, from the both banks, you see high-rise buildings, you see a lot of beautiful architecture of the various periods. But back in the 19th century, especially, let's say, first half of the 19th century, the old city was just on the right bank of the Kura River, and the left bank was very, I would say, largely underdeveloped with just a couple of villages there. But things started to change really quickly. And yes, before that bridge was inaugurated, people mainly traveled from one shore to the other just on ferries, and ferries would be just a typical transport because the city was quite the city itself was quite compact, but the number of villages all around it, well, people needed to get there somehow. I always love sharing some old photos. I guess they just add to the vibe. Plus, you get to see really what was going on with Tbilisi. And then city started growing. That's the bridge that connects the two shores, the two banks of the river. And finally, Tbilisi started to outgrow itself, to grow out of the walls, and it stretched to the left bank of the river. So there is no more villages; it's just big part of the city, and the area just right by the water became just right by the bridge became the square. And we walked the square just last night, and you can see how many people there are, and you can see the two, well, in this photograph you can see the two banks of the river and the bridge. It's now called the Sauerbrücken Bridge, just named after a just the sister city of Tbilisi, that is in Germany. But back in the days, it just had a different name. And in the heart of the square, there was a monument to the viceroy of the Russian Empire. And that part of the city really had this European looks and the vibe. A lot of foreigners, a lot of Germans, Italians, French lived exactly on that part of the city, which was considered European and really, upscale. And in this photograph, well, you see the monument. It's a stereo photograph, by the way, end of the 19th century. And if you just look straight ahead, right behind the monument, you will see a house. That's actually the house we are heading to. On obviously, just in case, that's Mikhail Vorontsov, the viceroy, to whom this monument was erected in the 19th century. And obviously, Ilia Chavchavadze, the man, I would say, he was fully Georgian from head to toes, completely Georgian, but with a very European education, with a lot of European views, and it was the best place for him to live. He still lived in the heart of the city, but in the progressive part of the city, and he totally realized how being progressive and how being established and connected to cultures and countries around you was absolutely essential for the preservation, but not only the preservation, but also the development of your own identity. So that's why we're heading just there, right behind the monument that's no longer here, unfortunately. Uh, and that's the house. Um, the house is way bigger than it seems, right? The white one that we needed to see. It's way bigger than it seems, and this is not the entire house belonged to Ilia Chavchavadze. No, he only just rented several rooms on the upper floor. But with Georgia, like the facade is just a facade, right? But everything happens really behind the doors and also in the courtyards, and the courtyards are the soul of the building, because to me every historic building is is a, well, it's kind of it's a creature, it's alive. And we're going to also see the soul of this house before we get down to the museum. But let me also turn down the volume. We don't really need that. So I filmed this actually several times. So I've been multiple times to this house, and the video is made up of a lot of videos, and also some extra footage, some photographs taken from open sources. And the house underwent really, really massive restoration. And not all, let's say, not all the rooms that we find in the house today have been restored. And since the house had many other people who lived in it, it's still partially a residential building, and people still live there, and it has nothing to do with the museum. Here on the wall, we also have the same bridge, the Mikhailovsky Bridge, and you can just see how rural this area was. Just a couple of buildings, honestly. And that, yeah, yes, there used to be also an island kind of that just split the Kura River into two armlets, but that was filled up, and I showed you the story with you on some of the tours, so we're just skipping that. And yeah, I promised to take you to the heart of the building, to the courtyard. So no matter how European the facade is, I never cease to to say that a facade can be very European, it can be, I don't know, reminding you of Vienna or Paris or St. Petersburg or whatever. But in Tbilisi, you need to just check out the courtyard, and you will see that this is like absolutely unbeatable, and it could only be in Georgia. The balconies, glass balconies, just terraces, and in many ways, no matter how many apartments the house had and how many families it accommodated, the balconies would in most cases be just like one long balcony, and every resident could just access it, and it was like a common space. And the courtyards as well, they would have the water source, a well or a little fountain, whatever, and a lot of lush greenery, because in the heat people were seeking for shade and some refreshment. And just the Georgian courtyards, what about just bonding with nature and bonding with the people that lived in your house, be it just one family or dozens of families. It was seen as one big Georgian family, I would say. I think this is a magnolia tree, but I think I filmed it. I think this particular video was filmed in March or April, something like that. I can't really remember. So what you see now, this wing belongs to the museum. The wing, well, actually, the house was like the English letter U. So one section, it belongs to the museum, also the administration of the museum, and the part of it is just residential still. And that's me enjoying myself in the garden. It was a really, really, really lovely day, and I was really enjoying myself and having these palm trees there. Well, in this particular photo, it feels like I'm in Tel Aviv, and maybe that's why for this weekend I've chosen to take it to the Museum of Nahum Gutman tonight, to Tel Aviv, not Jerusalem. That's giving a completely different vibe. And also with regards to this museum, It's not only Ilia Chavchavadze I'm going to be talking about. It's way more than just him. It's also other people in his life. It's people who contributed to the creation of the museum, to the preservation of his heritage, and also just, memorial items. We have spoken about it before, since we had a tour in Saguramo. Those who have been with me, you probably remember that Ilia Chavchavadze only lived for 70 years. He was born in 1937, and in 1907 he was assassinated, and his life was taken away from him in a really, really horrible manner. His wife was also affected and really badly wounded, and that was a shock. It was a huge blow to the entire Georgian nation and culture, a huge loss. And he touched hearts and lives of so many people. And after his death, hundreds and thousands of Georgians came to say goodbye, and also later on worked on preservation of all the accomplishments by Chavchavadze. For example, let's say just in this lobby, which is hold on a second, and like this lobby, which is not even there's just some pop-up windows which are really getting on my nerves. Let me just disable them. This should be okay, hopefully. Yeah, so it's just the hall, just the lobby of the museum. We're not even in the memorial part, but there's like an interesting story that I wanted to share with you. So we know of Ilia Chavchavadze as a poet, as the writer, as a philosopher, and also the person who did a lot of good cause and created and launched a lot of projects to develop let's say everything about Georgia. He also was in charge of opening, schools. He was the founder of the Society of Elimination of Illiteracy in Georgia, and he was in charge of a lot of theater projects, and it just, you name it. But it wasn't just that. It's not the lobby, I know. It's not the lobby. It's not what I'm showing you, Sharon. I'm showing you the portrait of Mikhail Gidevanishvili. So this person is not a writer. This person was not an actor. No, he was just a physician. He was a doctor. And Mikhail Gidevanishvili, it's just, I really wanted to share this, like really just a few things, and then we're heading to the lobby, okay? Sharon, that's okay. We're good. Mikhail Gidevanishvili was a doctor, and he was the first physician that purchased X-ray machines for his small private hospital. But the thing is that he spent all his funds to purchase these X-ray machines from Europe, and he brought them to Georgia. Tbilisi had nothing. It was the really, really, I would say, like largely underdeveloped city, unfortunately, and. What Chavchavadze did? He provided 2 rooms in the house that he rented. He arranged it with his sister that the 2 rooms would be given to Mikhail Gidevanishvili just for his X-ray machines. And you know what? Any Georgian, regardless of their budget, was given a treatment and taken care of in this house. So it wasn't just culture projects. It wasn't just that. It also a lot of other work that was done to support the people of the country. But now the lobby. So where I entered, well, actually, this was the main entrance to the house. It's part of the museum. And it's not really the lobby that you're probably expecting, because, it just has white walls, but it has the original tiles, 19th century tiles. I don't know what was here, if the lobby was decorated as, normally these houses would be. Probably yes, but we don't have any information about it. But we have, we have the tiles. I'm a tile fan. I know I'm not the only tile fan here, so we have that in a pretty good condition. And as I said, Chavchavadze lived on the upper floor. The house belonged to the sister of Ilia Chavchavadze. So it was the house that belonged to the Chavchavadze family, but actually the documents differ. So first, there was only document discovered that it belonged to the sister. Chavchavadze family was a well-off family, noble family. And the first documents just testified the ownership only sold to his sister. But then the documents showed up claiming that Ilia Chavchavadze and his sister and his sister's family, she married to another aristocratic dynasty. So the both owned the building, but he didn't occupy the entire house. Another old photograph that you well, it's not an old photograph, it's just an artwork from the 90s, local artists depicting it the way it must have looked like, with a horse, with a carriage back in the 19th century. And you know what? The museum has this a little, model, of the house. And this is what you can see. So as I said, there's like the English letter U-shaped building with the courtyard, and it's way bigger, right, than it seems. That's just a very typical thing about the Georgian buildings. And they unfortunately, the buildings next to it, we don't really have much information about. This is really what we are missing about a lot of buildings. We still don't have really much information, but luckily, what we know is that at some point, just believe it or not, about more than a dozen families lived in this house. So at some point, even like 20 families lived in the house. Big one, really big. So this is the memorial part. That is just the front of the building. And the 2 floors. So, but the memorial part of Chavchavadze is only the upper floor, just several rooms, and we're going to see half of it. And just around the model, you see the books. So those were the books that were published with the support of Ilia Chavchavadze. Not only was he a writer, but he also supported the publications and publishings of a lot of books that were published in Georgian, because it's important to remember that under the Russian Empire, the education, theater, all the cultural activities were all carried out in the Russian language. And it was not easy to ensure the activities in the Georgian language. It wasn't easy. And due to that, in the first half of the 19th century, the Georgian language was really having, really difficult time. It was in decline among the people. And Chavchavadze did everything possible just not to let it happen. That's why there's always a lot of books, but he also was in charge of several magazines, of several newspapers, which we're going to talk about as well. You see, there's so much to talk about. And even though the museum is not really that big, the legacy is very difficult to squeeze into just one tour. Plus, I'm talking about some other people that worked with him, because he wouldn't have been able to accomplish all that even in 270 years had he been just all by himself. That's his sister, by the way, Elizabeth Chavchavadze. He had many siblings. Some of them died when they were in their youth, but every brother and sister of Ilia Chavchavadze was very well educated. Well, they came from the noble family. They studied in St. Petersburg, and all of them were raised in love and care. And their mother would always read them in Georgian, and every evening she would read something in Georgian, and the next evening she would ask them what they remembered from what she had read to them the night before, and they had to retell it. And that's how every Chavchavadze sibling grew up with a very good knowledge and skills of the native language. Unfortunately, it didn't happen with fellow Georgians, with many of the fellow Georgians. The language was in such decline that it just happened. It was really common that Georgians spoke Russian way better than they spoke Georgian language. So the situation was really dire. So there had to be something done about it. And here in this room, we have just some, photographs about the family and the houses where they lived. Well, Chavchavadze was born in the Kakheti region, this famous wine region, the town of Quareli. I'm just providing here the inscriptions, and here you can, well, the names, and you can see the caption. You can see also the Georgian language and its alphabet. I don't speak Georgian, unfortunately. And, this is, for me as a linguist, well, everything that Chavchavadze accomplished and all the work that's was done after he passed away, that's just incredible. And that's the house, that's the family manor, I would say. So even though it was an aristocratic family, it's not like they rolled in it. No, but well, he also married into another aristocratic family, Guramishvili, and the Sagurama estate, not far from Tbilisi, and it's in the country's ancient capital, Tkheta. Actually, that's the land that belonged to the family of his wife, so Guramishvili. And on the previous tour of the Sagurama estate, we did speak about them as a family, and we're going to be talking about it probably in the next episode because there is so much to cover tonight. But we will get back to Sagurama and some of the stories that I mentioned on that tour as well. I'm going to be adding a lot. There's just the photos that I took a couple of weeks back of Sagurama. As I said, the tour recording is available on demand, and always for my sponsors. It's just some of the rooms in Sagurama, the study of Ilia Chavchavadze. And you know what? So we're gonna be visiting the study of Chavchavadze tonight, and his Tbilisi home. And it's just interesting to see that in actually there are 6 museums of Chavchavadze in the country. And in every of the museum, well, I haven't been to all of them yet, but I have my bucket list. There would always be somewhere in a study a figurine, or a bust or an illustration of Shota Rustaveli, the author of the most iconic and important literature piece in the Georgian history, the 12th century poem, A Night in the Panther's Skin, which we're going to be talking today as well. That's the mother of Chavchavadze. Over there to the right, that's his father, really in their probably like youth. And that's Chavchavadze himself, when he was just in his late teens. As I said, every simply studied in St. Petersburg. So he started at a law school in St. Petersburg, but actually never graduated. And this is the school for girls that was established by the Chavchavadze family. It was more like a club for girls. So the family of Chavchavadze, being also highly educated and literate, they wanted to spread literacy. They also wanted to just to do a good cause for the community, and there was open to society that the sisters of Chavchavadze and the mother of Chavchavadze were in charge of. It was like the education club. The girls were taught some languages, they did some handicraft together, they had an amateur theater. It's just and everything was done in Georgian, and of course it was not done on the official scale as well. Now let's move on. We see the furniture that is original to this house. You don't see the decorations. You don't see the. This is still the ground floor or the first floor where Chavchavadze did not live, right? So you don't really see the decorations on the walls. You don't see the plaster. So the idea of the restoration project was to first and foremost save the building from just dilapidating, and also to preserve the memorial part connected to Chavchavadze. That was the most important thing. And the rest of the space that the museum was given would be different temporary exhibitions, some themed exhibitions. And we have some furniture that is, that was either contemporaneous to the times or will also belong to Chavchavadze family. From, just hold on a second, let me make sure everything's working okay. Yeah, fantastic. So let's move on. Here, well, we have a big portrait of Chavchavadze that was painted in the 20th century. There are a lot of portraits that were painted after he passed away, and only several that were painted during his lifetime. And we saw some of them in Sagorama, and we'll see some more also as the tour goes. And in this particular section on the ground floor, we have the story of the impact of Chavchavadze on the theater and cultural life of the country. Why it was so important for Chavchavadze to support the theaters and make it possible, ensure the production of plays in the Georgian language, because, well, making people read, especially when half of the country was illiterate because living in the small villages and in the rural areas and in the mountains, that was one thing. That was, quite an undertaking. But well, people had to be literate for it. But theater had a really easier access to, well, people had easier access to that, and it was way easier just at least to perceive something in their native language. So that's really an obvious thing. That's why, but it was also important to have, the books that were written in Georgian, or at least translated into Georgian. And Chavchavadze being fluent in several languages, foreign languages, so he obviously also did a lot of translation work. And he had a staff of people. He had actually several publishing offices that was in charge of that as well. And whenever there was, I also like this lamp, I believe it's just gorgeous. Um, uh, so whenever there was a new book written in Georgian, Chavchavadze was in charge of it. Chavchavadze was on it. He knew about every book published in Georgian. So, and then whenever there was a new play, well, that he was also making sure that it was okay, and it would be good to go, just to be put on stage at some point. They're in very close to the Liberty Square. Some of you might remember this area from my tours, but it's not really, the location is not really that relevant. There was a theater established. There actually were several theaters, but in most cases, the performances would be done either in Russian or in French, because the French was the language of the Russian Empire, like, of the nobility, I mean, and obviously peasants and village people were not really, encouraged to go to the theaters, and they couldn't, right? But so there were several theaters, but the productions had to be done, in Georgian, right? So in these photographs, you see that the theater company that participated in the performances and the production of the plays. And also, as I said, there was like a small committee of writers, translators that worked on the productions, and obviously theater directors, and that also needed a lot of finance. And Chavchavadze was also in charge of, was also into the financial side of things, which we will also talk about how it was all possible. And also in this photograph, the man that is standing in the top hat, that's his nephew, Konstantino Chavchavadze. There is a street named after him, and it actually takes you to the Liberty Square in the heart of this 19th century area of Tbilisi. And Chavchavadze is one of the national heroes who fought for independence of Georgia. So it wasn't just Ilia Chavchavadze, but his contemporary, but also his relatives, the descendants that just carried on with this like big work fighting for the Georgian independence. And Chavchavadze was eventually executed by the Soviets in the early 1920s because he participated in a number of appraisals against the Soviet oppression. Yeah, so just kind of a side note, as I said, I will be, every now and again switching to some other subjects. So as I said, Chavchavadze was also, well, he realized that a lot of his work would definitely need the financing. And as I said, he was from an aristocratic family, but they didn't roll on it. And obviously, such undertaking needed large funds and continuous, flow of investment. And so, as I said, he wasn't the only one working on this. And there was a group of people, educated. All of them started in Europe or in St. Petersburg. They had education, in economics and finance, in bank business. And there was a marshal of nobility, Dmitry Kipiani, together with Chavchavadze. And plus Chavchavadze had the knowledge of, well, even though he did not finish the St. Petersburg Law Academy, law school, well, but he was well versed, in let's say, in legislation of the Russian Empire and some economic things. So they had an idea. This we are talking 1860s and 1870s, and these are the years that, well, I would say in these years, Russian Empire underwent really massive changes. The reforms of the abolishment of serfdom or slavery, abolished in 1861. And that obviously affected Georgia. And the abolishment of slavery largely affected the masters, the aristocracy, which lost the free manpower, right? The free workforce. That was a huge blow to, it was a huge stress to all the nobility across the Russian Empire. And the Georgian nobility, I would like to remind you, when the Russian Empire invaded, they recognized Georgian nobility and granted them the same rights and, the same status, and just basically made the Georgian nobility equal to the Russian nobility, regardless of the territories and the geography. And that was a huge blow. And obviously Chavchavadze realized that with this, huge stress that the aristocracy was going through, even though he really, really welcomed the abolishment of slavery. And Chavchavadze was one of the first Georgians that let go his own peasants. But yes, they did have serfs before that. That is true, but then he just let them go. I'm not saying if it's good, but I'm just saying how it was, and he was excited about that really big reform. He was looking forward to it, and he hailed it. Was one of the first Georgians that really hailed the reform. However, he realized that this would be really, I would say, this would give a hard time, to him, finding the finance, the support, the sponsors for a lot of projects. So Dmitry Kipiani, Chavchavadze, and several other people. I think I just did. I'm not sure. Yeah. Okay. This should be good. Yeah. That's what I missed. That's what I. No. 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 Not that. Okay. Let's do it once again. Let's do it the way my laptop wants it to do. So there was eventually made a committee of basically lawyers, specialists in economics and bank business, Georgians that just sat together and drafted the plan of establishing the land bank for nobility. And that bank was supposed to, well, I'm not going into the mechanisms of it. I'm not really well versed in how it worked, but that bank was supposed to support, the aristocracy, providing them, the funds, credits, and also that bank was supposed to help the liberated serfs. It's just like one of the additional reforms to support the reforms in Georgia. And that bank, eventually this charter was drafted, and Ilia Chavchavadze, together with several other lawyers, went to St. Petersburg to be given, to official permission to go ahead with the plan. And it worked. So the bank was opened. Again, I'm not sure how it functioned. I know nothing about it, but it worked. And that bank later on also kept earning money, and this would be one of the sources for the funding of all the activities that were arranged by Chavchavadze. And again, he was engaged in all sorts of things. So theater productions, book printing, book binding, even the translation, and also the publication and the release of several different newspapers and magazines, literature, and not only, and many other activities. And everyone in Georgia say, well, whenever you say Ilia, it's about Chavchavadze. That's true. And they say it's just, the father of the Georgian nation. And this is just the man who did so much for Georgia. But they never really go into details. And I thought, like, okay, well, just tell me something that he did. Like, okay, give me like 5 things at least. And they can come up with like 55 things, 55, accomplishments. So there's really so much to talk about. I'm trying really to also keep it, short and sweet. Now we're finally going to the second floor, to the memorial part. But well, I'm just starting basically with how the museum guide really takes you. So first, they kind of give you the little introduction about what kind of person Chavchavadze was, and then we can see finally his study. For those who watched my tour in Sagurama, you may remember that, well, his let's say his dwellings were never really looking like gorgeous, but always, looking classy and furnished with a taste. I love this furniture. I absolutely love the furniture. I like the bookcase, the fireplace. They have not been able to preserve the upholstery or the wallpapers. I don't know, but and since they haven't been able to preserve it, so we don't have it on the walls. That's just it. But at least we have the furniture, and every item here actually belonged to Chavchavadze. And as I said, in every study there would be, either a portrait or a statue or something with Shota Rustaveli, and you can see his portrait, the one to the left. And I will also, you will also have it here. So Shota Rustaveli, who was a diplomat, actually, he wasn't a poet, but he then, and in his free time in between the negotiations, he just, drafted the poem, honoring the one of the greatest leaders, Queen Tamar. We are talking here 12th century. And by the way, Shota Rustaveli died in Jerusalem. Just in case, just an interesting, and he was involved in a lot of different negotiations with the Crusaders, and eventually he passed away there. And you could even find in one of the monasteries that used to belong to Georgia in the Holy Land, there was, on one of the walls, there was a fresco with his portrait. That's a big deal, but that monastery no longer belongs to Georgian church, so it's no longer relevant. Or there is this portrait of Shota Rustaveli, just in case, very popular, it can be found everywhere. So, and that famous, and there would always be a copy in every estate of Chavchavadze. There would always be the copy of the manuscript of this Knight in the Panther Skin. And you know what, actually, up until the 19th century, there was a tradition that every girl that was about to get married, part of her dowry would be the manuscript of the Knight in the Panther Skin. But then this tradition was forgotten. And that was one of those bad signs, I would say. So that really indicated how bad things were in terms of the Georgian language and the decline of the Georgian culture, like the national element of it, I would say, but not nationalistic, right? That's different. Another portrait in the study is the portrait of King Heraclius II, who, by the way, initiated the signing of this treaty, Georgievsky Treaty, that stipulated, I'll cut to the chase, that granted the support and patronage of the Russian Empire in case of attacks. In case of attacks endured by Georgia, and it was done so to get support and extra protection for Georgia, which had been so sick and tired, let's put it just in very simple words, sick and tired of the onslaughts of Persia or the Ottoman Empire. But that didn't help. In 1795, you probably know from my tours, or you probably just know that there was a really, really severe attack on Tbilisi, and Tbilisi was almost razed to the ground by a Persian, by Persian sheikh. Well, anyway, and also this might be new. Chavchavadze had a lot of people he admired, like characters from history, such as Giuseppe Garibaldi, the fighter for the independence of Sicily, and all his accomplishment, all his work, he saw it as a big example. He read a lot about him, and it was happening in the 19th century, so that was something similar that Chavchavadze wanted for his country. So he saw it, and he saw it as just really absolutely, well, I would say, functional and feasible ideas. And but it's important to remember that 5 minutes. But it's important to remember that Chavchavadze was not seen as an extremist. He didn't hate the Romanovs. He acted as a diplomat. He had to be very cautious because in many cases he was like really caught between a rock and a hot place. But still, he was a diplomat, and he was being always very diplomatic. However, we're going to talk about it later on. He was under the secret supervision of Tsar's police. Anyway, even though it was just, the innocent literary work, which obviously wasn't just only that, but it was just definitely like, literature, theater, but also with the media, which he was in charge of. Well, that obviously had a great impact on the minds of the fellow Georgians, which the secret police couldn't have, just let him get away with easily. Here on the mantelpiece, you see the bust of Garibaldi and William Shakespeare. And also in the frame, there is one of the first issues of the Iveria newspaper. That's one of the newspapers that Chavchavadze was in charge of. So that was literature, everyday life, but basically it was about the enlightenment, education of the Georgian people, and always sharing the news from like around the world. Many people in Georgia was quite conservative, and I would say not really exposed to the news of the world, not really connected, not really knowing what was going on outside of even like their own neighborhood. And Chavchavadze wanted to change that. And also the important thing is, and I know I will need to wrap up shortly because there's one more tour that we scheduled, and we scheduled the tours back to back because we didn't want to overlap with the tours done by our colleagues as well. So we have to be mindful of our colleagues. So sorry for that, but I'm gonna say that well, we don't have the decorations on the walls, no upholstery, no water, no wallpapers, but that curtain over there that goes along the frieze, well, it's just like next to the frieze, these are the curtains that have been recreated. So the museum was able to find the manufacturer in Europe. I hadn't been told which company it was, but the manufacturer, the museum found a piece of this, curtains. They contacted the manufacturer in Europe, and that manufacturer is still active, and they made the new curtains according to the old designs that have been kept in the collection of the company. So we have the curtains actually, that look just the same as they looked back in the times of Ilia Chavchavadze. And here in this room, Chavchavadze worked well, he spent about half of the day either in the bank or in one of the committees, and also at the meetings. But then well, in the afternoon, he would always come back to his study and mainly got himself busy with the checking, because he was the editor-in-chief of several newspapers. So the Iberia was like his, I would say, brainchild. That's just a photo from Wikipedia of the and um, and but Iberia was just one of the newspapers, and this was one of the most, I would say, widely published across the country, and not just in Tbilisi, the entire Georgia. But there was one more, because as I said, he was really, multitasking person. There was another. Iberia was mainly about literature and like news around the world, but the Georgian Gazette, that was the horse of a different color. Like that's like 1863. This journal was only released just for less than 1 year. It only survived just several issues, because that one, that one contained a lot of, well, I think almost political, that share the, kind of political news, geopolitical news, and also, some of the philosophical, studies and other articles that were seen as potentially dangerous by the Tsar's police. And, there was censorship, there was a committee in charge of the censorship. And so that journal was eventually closed, and Chavchavadze only and Chavchavadze was basically in charge of Iberian, switched to Iberia and continued his fight well through, let's say, enlightenment. This is where we're going to wrap this up. And for on Sunday, on the 26th of July, I'm going to show you I'm going to show you the living room, the gorgeous dining room with a lot of furniture, and also upholstery survived. We're going to see the bedroom that has wall decorations and all the original furniture. And we're going to talk about some other accomplishments and a lot of celebrities that visited the house of Chavchavadze and dined with him. We're going to talk about the Thursday parties that were held. Well, not the parties, but the Thursdays, like the jour fixe, the fixed days from French, where the most, let's say, enlightened brains of Georgia always attended and worked together on like planning, new accomplishments and new missions. So we're going to be talking about all that next time. Thank you so much, Sharon. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, Maria. That's okay. I didn't say any other doodles. I'm not sure what it was. And as I said, there is so much that he accomplished. It's going to probably take me maybe 5 more tours, but we'll take it like, one step at a time. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'm going to share with you some links, just once again, also for the upcoming episode. So in 5 minutes from now, Misha is chiming in with his tour on the Soviet literature of late 1960s and then 1970s. And also, I'm taking you tonight to the Museum of Nahum Gutman in Tel Aviv. It's one of my favorite Israeli artists. And for the next weekend, the second episode, Sunday, July 26th, then also Insane Archaeology of Jerusalem next Sunday. And on Saturday, I'm taking you for the second episode of the Sheremetyev Palace and the Music Museum in St. Petersburg. And I'm taking you to one of the big tenant houses of St. Petersburg that belonged to a Jewish merchant, Bach. Well, that's the plan so far, but it's likely that a couple other tours will be added, but I'll keep you posted about it. There's going to be really special ones. Thank you, Cindy. So, my dear friends, if you enjoyed the tour, I would appreciate your support. It can be a PayPal donation. You could buy me a coffee. You can also do just in one go. So thank you so much for the appreciation of my work and the interest in the tours. I am very well aware that Georgia is not, as interesting as some other European countries, but I hope that with just a little bit of, my contribution. I just made it a little bit closer to at least, a couple of people, like all the handful of people that we have on this tour. 10 people, that's already a lot. That's a party. That's a party. Thank you, Maria. Thank you, everyone. Yes, so we'll have a lot to talk about next time. Thank you for joining. Thank you for everything. And Misha is already itching to begin. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.